this section of leadership, I will be discussing about authentic leadership, then I will discuss how the trust is developed in the leader and subordinate, and followed by the discussion on the power and politics. So, to begin with, I will discuss about authentic leadership, ethics and trust. Who are authentic leaders? Ethical people who know who they are and they know that they believe in and value and act according to those values and belief openly and candidly. Their primary quality is trust. Why build trust? What is the relevance of trust in relationship? When people share information, they encourage open communication, stick to their ideals, those people would be believed by the subordinate. So, still a new topic needs more research on trust, ethics, trust and leadership. Ethics touch on many leadership styles. As the moral leaders of organizations, CEO must demonstrate high ethical standards. All of us must have seen that there are many issues that come up in organizations now and then. The leaders are not able to exhibit as per the values of organizations. So, there the leaders are not accepted by the followers. So, ethics in or ethical values or high ethical standards are very important for leaders to adopt. So, ethics touch on many leadership styles. As the moral leaders of the organization, CEOs must demonstrate high ethical standards, socialized charismatic leadership, leaders who model ethical behavior. Most of the organizations which have a sustainable competitive advantage rests on the ethical standards adopted by the leaders. Tata is known for trust and the trust with subordinates, trust with stakeholders, and the concept of trust has emanated from the values of the founders of the Tata Group. So, the Jamshedji Tata adopted high ethical standards while setting up the Tata Groups. So, the ethical standards, moral values are set by the founders. Apple is a successful organization because of the ethical standards of or ethical values adopted by Steve Jobs. Similarly, most of the organizations, the successful ones are till today performing effectively because of the values which have been framed, which are because they are sticking to the moral values, ethical values. Ethics is the prime concern in the organizations. Let us talk about Johnson and Johnson, which started years back. Johnson and Johnson is a successful organization or the most effective organization which also abides by the ethical values. So, here we are discussing this in context of if the leader adopts or if the leader wants the followers to follow follow them, if the leader wants a subordinate or influence subordinates, the subordinates must also see the values which are adopted by the leader. So, socialized charismatic leadership, leaders who model ethical behavior. Trust, the positive expectation that another person will not act opportunistically, composed of a blend of familiarity and willingness to take risk. 5 key dimensions of trust: integrity, competence, consistency, loyalty and openness. Then the dimensions of trust, we will move with each one of them. Integrity, that means honesty and truthfulness. How truthful we are in performing our task. How much honesty is there in our performance. Competence is an individual's technical and interpersonal knowledge and skills. The followers would also have trust with the subordinates based on their competency, based on their expertise, based on their skills or based on their knowledge and skills. Consistency, an individual's reliability, predictability and good judgment in handling situations. How much is the person consistent and reliable, predictable and has control over handling situations, is judicious enough in handling different situations. Loyalty is the willingness to protect and save face for another person, and openness is reliance on the person to give you the full truth. There are three types of trust. One is deterrence based trust, knowledge based trust is the second one, and identification based trust. What is the deterrence based trust? Trust which is based on fear of reprisal if the trust is violated. Knowledge based trust is the trust based on behavioral predictability that comes from history of interactions. The knowledge based trust is the trust based on behavioral predictability that comes from the history of interaction with subordinates, the knowledge proficiency of an individual. Identification based trust, trust based on mutual understanding of one another's intentions and appreciation of others' wants and desires. Basic principles of trust is mistrust drives out trust, trust begets trust. If there is trust with subordinates, there would be reciprocal trust by the subordinates with the leader. Trust can be regained by removing the misconceptions, improving interpersonal relationship, and mistrust generally reduces productivity, lack of trust also self destructs. So, trust and leadership, is there any kind of relationship? Yes, trust is a psychological state that exists when you agree to make yourself vulnerable to another, because you have a positive expectation for how things are going to turn out. The key attributes associated with leadership: followers who trust their leaders will align their actions and attitude with the leader's behavior and request. Trust will lead to desired action, desired attitude. So, trust is a kind of a psychological state of mind which will exist when you agree to make yourself vulnerable to another, because you have a positive expectation of how things are going to turn out. Then how trust is developed? Leadership action. Trust is developed through integrity, benevolence and ability. If you have integrity, you have truthfulness, and you have also concern for subordinates, and there is an ability or which will generate confidence. So, people will start trusting you, then the trust builds, and then action is risk taking, information sharing, group effectiveness and productivity. When there are a group of subordinates working with a leader, if the leader exhibits honesty, integrity, concern with the subordinates' well-being, and also has ability due to his existing expertise, knowledge, skills, so the trust is gained by the leader. The subordinates will start trusting the leader because of his unique abilities, because of his integrity, because of his truthfulness and his good nature. So, the people will develop a rapport or interaction, interpersonal relationship improves, and this would result in effective performance, group performance, productivity, sharing of information within the work group. So, overall this will help in development of the organization. Self leadership. What is self leadership? A set of processes through which individuals control their own behavior, and effective leaders help followers to lead themselves. They important in self managed teams. It will help in engaging self leaders. They make a mental chart of the peers and colleagues, focus on influence and not the control mechanism. They create opportunities for subordinates and do not wait for them. Then I will discuss about leadership and managing power. Is there any relationship between leadership and power? Let us first discuss about what is power. Power is the capacity that A has to influence the behavior of B, so that B acts in accordance with A's wishes. Exists as a potential or fully actualized influence over a dependent relationship. So, in a dependent relationship, A exercises influence over B based on position power, based on knowledge power, referent power and so on, and based on expertise. So, dependency is B's relationship to A when A possesses something that B needs or requires. The greater is the dependence, the more the power A exercises. So, what is power? We will discuss about power as an influential intentional influence over belief, emotion and behavior of people. Potential power is the capacity to do so, but the kinetic power is that the act of doing so. One person exhibits or exerts power over another to the degree that he is able to exact compliance as desired. There are two facets of power, one is negative power, another is positive power. Negative power is characterized by primitive, unsocialized needs of having dominance over submissive others or the less confident individuals. Positive power is characterized by socialized need to initiate, influence and lead others. Sources of power comes due to formal position or personality characteristics of individuals. Contrasting leadership and power, we will discuss about certain traits of leadership, power as well as some points of power. Leadership focuses on achievement of goal, it requires goal compatibility with followers, focuses on influence downward and whereas power is using a means for achieving goals. Power is a measure for reaching goals. Leadership focuses on achievement of goals. The focus is goal and here the power is used as a means to achieve goals. Leadership focuses on goal compatibility with followers, but power requires followers dependency. Here is a dependency relationship between A and B. If A exercises power on B, so there is a kind of dependence relationship. If A has referent power, expertise power, knowledge power, so the B is depending on A to seek that information, knowledge or resources used to gain lateral and upward influence. This can be both lateral and upward influence of power, whereas in leadership the influence is downwards. Basis of power, formal power. The formal power has its basis on coercive power, reward power and legitimate power. Formal power is established by an individual's position in an organization. It is bestowed to the individual based on the authority or the position the individual enjoys. So, coercive power is a power base dependent on fear of negative results. It is a power to punish individuals based on when the person is not able to achieve results, is not able to achieve goals. So, the fear of negative results, fear of not obtaining results. Reward power is a positive power. Reward power, compliance achieved based on the ability to distribute rewards that others view as valuable. Otherwise, you can say reward power is a positive power, giving a reward to an individual when he is able to achieve goals. Legitimate power, that individual is a formal authority to control and use resources based on the person's position in the hierarchy. So, legitimate power is the power to have access over information, access over resources, access over resources and information based on the position the person is holding due to a formal authority, formal hierarchy. So, basis of power, personal power is power that comes to an individual based on his expertise, based on his reference, based on the knowledge. So, expert power influence is based on special skills or knowledge. Referent power, the influence is based on possession of an individual of desirable resources or personal traits. What is dependency? Dependency is the key to power. The general dependency rule or dependency postulate that the greater B's dependency on A, the greater is the power A has over B. If there is a relationship between A and B, B will exercise more power if he has more dependency on A based on the power A has. So, possession or control of scarce resources that others need makes a manager powerful. Access to optional resources, that is multiple supplies, reduces the resource holders' power. Dependency increases when the resources are important, scarce, non-substitutable. Power tactics is ways in which individuals translate power bases into specific actions. 9 influence tactics: legitimacy, rational persuasion, inspirational appeals, consultation, exchange, personal appeals, ingratiation, pressure and coalition. Factors influencing power tactics is choice and effectiveness of influence tactics are moderated by sequencing of tactics, political skill of the user, the culture of the organization. What is political behavior? Activities that are required as part of the formal role in the organization, but that influence or attempt to influence the distribution of advantage or disadvantage within the organization. Legitimate political behavior, normally everyday politics, explaining, bypassing, obstructing, illegal political behavior, extreme political behavior that violates the implied rules of the game, sabotage, whistleblowing and symbolic protest. What is organizational politics? Organizational politics involved intentional acts of influence to enhance or protect the self-interest individuals or organizations. The political system, the political subsystem is composed of resources, locations and flow of power through organization. Conditions of use of power and politics: scarcity, interdependence, differentiation, heterogeneous goals, conflict, importance, distribution of power. Summary and managerial implications here is: increase your power by having others depend on you more. Expert and referent power are far more effective than is the coercion. Greater employee motivation, performance, commitment and satisfaction. Personal power base is not organizational, and effective managers accept the political nature of organizations. I will focus on how leaders can be mentors. Leaders are also like mentors. Mentoring is defined as information and advice which is provided by an older experienced individual to a younger employee and less experienced individual to help in the latter's growth and development. It is very closer to the traditional Gurukul mode of learning in the Indian culture. Mentor and protege. Mentors are individuals with advanced experience and knowledge who are committed to provide upward mobility and career support to their proteges. Proteges are individuals or the subordinates who receive guidance, coaching, support from the mentors. Leaders also act as mentors. Mentor is a senior employee who sponsors and supports a less experienced employee. Good teachers present ideas clearly, listen and empathize. Two functions are the career coaching or the coaching, assisting and also sponsoring, and psychological, that is counseling, sharing, acting as a role model. The mentoring can be formal or informal. Mentors tend to select proteges who are similar to them in their background, may restrict minorities and women. Mentoring versus coaching and training. Coaching is primarily focused on the development of skills and performance within the current job, and training is a formal procedure organized to enhance employees as job related knowledge and skills so that they perform their jobs efficiently and effectively. Mentoring functions are career related or career support functions largely related to the specific task or the work. Psychosocial or emotional support functions provide emotional support and enhance proteges feeling of competence and identity. So, here we have been discussing leaders as mentors with respect to the organization. There are various employees whose performance need to be corrected, whose performance need to be improved. And so, if the leaders act as mentors, they help them develop their competencies, they can be future ready, and they can, and this mentoring, if the leaders are like mentors, they can also stop employee attrition, they can help the work group be more say inclusive, where people can with differences can also be accommodated in the work group and collective performance of the organization can improve. So, mentoring functions, career related or career support functions are largely related to the work. Psychological or emotional support functions provide emotional support and enhance the protege's feeling of competence and development or identity. It so happens that in a diverse work group where people with differences in age, gender, race and abilities, they feel alienated, and there are not only performance related issues, but also some psychological problems of disengagement emerges. So, here if the leader takes into consideration, understands the problems of the individuals and sympathizes, or you can say the leader empathizes with the subordinates, understands the performance flaw is not due to the inability to perform or not because of the, or the performance has fallen not because of the task inefficiency, but because of some personal problems or some psychological disengagement, then the employee can be included. These are inclusive practices for improving the performance of organizations. Alternative mentoring models, there are mentoring circles, peer mentoring, buddy system, team mentoring, consultant mentors and reverse mentoring. So, classification of mentor-protege relationship: primary mentoring, secondary mentoring, training based mentoring and resource based mentoring. There are different phases of mentoring relationship which starts with initiation, cultivation, separation and redefinition, and these phases are important. When initially when an employee is mentored may have some inhibitions or hesitation. Slowly the mentor-mentee start developing or cultivating the relationship, and then the mentor tries to overcome or help the mentee and tries to explore the problems of the mentee and helps him develop or overcome the challenges in the workplace. And slowly when the individual grows, there is a separation and the mentor becomes, the mentee develops himself. So, formal versus informal mentoring relationship: initiation of the relationship, basis of mentor-protege match, purpose of the relationship, phases of evolution or motivation to be a mentor, type of recognition of mentor, structure of the relationship and the length of the program and interpersonal processes. Cost and risk associated with mentor-protege relationship. The time cost associated with the mentor is time and effort involved in developing mentoring relationship is not short, but it is a long term investment. A poorly performing protege may reflect poorly on the mentor's competency and judgment of the choice of a protege. So, initially certain hassles do exist: risk of being displaced or backstabbed by ambitious or disloyal proteges. There are also chances of the proteges, if they are not honest or loyal or very ambitious, the mentor does not find it comfortable. Risk of being seen as playing favorites with their protege. There are also problems which may lack of talent to perform at the highest level. Proteges lack of talent, lack of interest, and proteges may not take the feedback very seriously. The proteges may play the mentor against supervisors or associates, thus harming the mentor's reputations. Sometimes they also may harm the reputation of the mentor. Proteges may become sometimes very dependent on the mentors and they may sometimes be very resentful. Whereas, the proteges may develop unrealistic expectations, career advancement regarding the promotion and career advancement. They may become targets of jealousy and gossip. Proteges success linked to success of the mentor. Sometimes these are some challenges, and proteges may live in the shadow of the mentor. Sometimes the mentor is so dominant, so the protege never grows, and proteges may get stuck into the political dynamics of the organization by getting associated with the mentor, and so these are some certain problems which we come across in the mentor-mentee relationship. The mentor may always take the credit of the protege's work, and the mentor may not keep commitments, the mentor expects too much, the mentor may not be willing to let go the mentee. So, design and implement formal mentoring programs. How can be a formal mentoring program be designed? The mentor mentee match should be associated. There should be some voluntary programs, mandatory programs, mentors rank and department could be identified, and frequency of scheduled meetings should be properly decided. Length of the mentoring program need to be identified, and identifying mentors and proteges. They should not be necessarily from the same departments, defining mentors and proteges responsibilities, evaluating the mentoring program should be a continuous process, and implementing the formal mentoring program. Mentoring relationship, a strategic HRM approach. There should be clear business or strategic reasons for mentoring programs. Goals of the mentoring program should be integrated with the goals of organizations. Formal mentoring program should support the informal mentoring relationship, should support company values and help perpetuate organizational culture. Senior managers should provide training to enhance their leadership skills. So, key elements of successful mentoring relationship is communicating mentoring goals to all persons involved, communicate goals, manage perception about the program, ensure cooperation from the entire organization, pilot testing the program, involve direct supervisors, obtain feedback, autonomy of mentor protege selection, manage resentment of not participating, ensure commitment of mentor to the program, and develop strategy to maintain. There should be a proper strategy to maintain separation phase and allow withdrawal. So, what we have discussed so far, we discussed about what is power, we differentiated leadership and power, and the basis of power, formal power, and the basis of personal power, then power tactics, and we also looked into the leaders as mentors, and what is mentoring, who are proteges, and how leaders can coach and guide mentors. Then finally, we concluded the discussion with some crisis or associated with mentor protege relationship, certain problems that the mentor mentee relationship may encounter, and we ended up the discussion with how a leadership, how a mentor can be, mentoring relationship can be made effective, or what are the key elements of successful mentoring relationship. Thank you.